the reason we're doing this new campaign about my story is because it's the name of Jesus, the power of Jesus that transforms lives, that renews hope, that takes hold of our being and transforms us into his glory. And we have some great speakers lined up for you. And every one of them has a powerful story to tell. But the purpose of doing that is to show you. Go on, nudge that person next to you. Okay, now nudge the other one. And just in case they didn't get it, just point to them. I'm talking to you. That you too have a story that is powerful. A life-changing story of how Jesus changed your life. Yes? Okay, why don't we welcome our guest today? And it's Bart. Now, Bart has an amazing, life-transforming story. So why don't you take your seats for a moment? But Bart's story didn't start off so good. And how many of you know that that makes no difference to the power of God? That God can take hold of whatever life throws at us and transform it to his glory and for our good. So I'm not going to give too much away as Bart gets ready. But also, I want to mention that his book is available after the service just through those doors. It's £10 and it tells all the story, the life-changing power of how Jesus has transformed Bart's life. So why don't you get hold of one for you, one for your neighbour, one for your friend. They're £10 only today. And so without any further, I'm going to hand over the microphone to Bart Gee.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Thank you. Brilliant. So, good morning, everyone. Brilliant. So I'm sure you will have noticed by now, it took me a little while to get up on stage, and you would have noticed that I'm quite severely disabled. And having my disability can sometimes get me into some quite funny situations. And when I was at sixth form at a school near Bristol. I was age around 17 at the time. Basically, at the school, it was a mainstream school, but they had quite a number of disabled people at the school as well. And so they had some staff there, especially to help out these disabled people. And one of these members of staff came up to me one day saying, "We've received something through the post which you might be interested in. It's regional trials for disabled athletics, basically for the southwest of England. Would you like to have a go?" And I thought to myself, I've never raced disabled people before. This could be quite good fun. So she said the event was taking place in Yeovil, which from my house at the time was about an hour and a half's drive. And she said it's taking place in just over 3 weeks' time. So if you want to enter, you need to get your entry in pretty quickly. And so I took the forms home and I thought to myself, I'm not very quick, but I can keep going. So I thought, well, let's enter the 1,500 meters. And then I thought, if I'm going all the way down to Yeovil, what's the point in doing one race? It'll all be over too quickly. I'll enter a second race too. So I entered the 400 meters as well. Now, at the time, you have to bear in mind that I'd never run 1,500 meters before. I'd walked it, but I'd never run it. But I thought, it'll be fine. I can train for it. And so I trained for it over those 3 weeks. And I gradually built up the distance. And I ran the 1,500 meters twice in practice. And then it was the day of the event, and I arrived in Yeovil, and my name was called for the starting line for the 1,500 meters. And I thought it was going to be like the Paralympics, where they put you into categories according to your disability. But no. There were 3 of us. There was me, there was someone who I think had cerebral palsy, and the other man was partially sighted. He could run just like anyone else, just couldn't see so well where he was going. And I thought, this is going to go horribly wrong. Well, the race started, and I was soon well behind the other 2, and it suddenly occurred to me, the partially sighted man is going to lap me. Is he going to see me? Unfortunately, he ran round me. And then the cerebral palsy man lapped me, and then the partially sighted man lapped me again. And I ended up having to run the whole last lap all on my own. And then I was coming onto the final bend with 200 meters to go, not knowing the schedule for the day. And there was an announcement over the sound system. Can Bart Gee please come to the starting line for the 400 meters? And I was thinking, I'm on my way. And do you know what was wrong with him in the 400 meters? He was deaf. My only chance was that he couldn't hit the starting gun. I thought, this isn't very fair. I've just ran the best part of a mile with my disability, and that was his first race. And the other funny thing about that race was there were people who came in wheelchairs. I imagine probably to rest their legs. They all got out their wheelchairs, they all ran around and beat me, and they all got back in their wheelchairs again. So anyway, that's one of many stories that I could share with you this morning. But I'm actually going to be sharing my testimony of basically of the miracle that I believe that God has done in my life. And so when I was 5 years old, I remember going to a car auction with my family. And Dad and my brother got out the car. And I remember sitting in the car with Mum. And I said to Mum, I want to become a Christian. How do I become a Christian? Because although I had limited understanding at that age, being 5 years old, I had absolutely no doubt about God's existence. And so Mum, first of all, explained to me the scripture, which I think will be coming up on screen, which says, which is John 3:16, which says, "For God so loved the world, that he gave his one and only Son, that whoever believes in him shall not perish, but have eternal life." And Mum said I needed to pray and ask Jesus into my heart. And in Romans 10, verse 9 to 10, it says, "If you declare with your mouth Jesus is Lord, and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. For it is with your heart that you believe and are justified, and it is with your mouth that you profess your faith and are saved." So there in the car with Mum, that's when I personally invited Jesus into my heart to be central in my life. Now, so onto my actual story about my disability. I was born severely disabled with a rare condition called arthrogryposis. And arthrogryposis basically means that I have weak muscles and stiff joints. And people with my condition are affected in different ways. So one person might be affected maybe in just their legs or maybe just their feet. Another person may affect maybe the upper half of their body. And for other people like me, it affects their whole body. And each person with my condition is uniquely affected as to how bad it is for them, how severely it affects them. And when I was born, doctors told my parents that I would never be able to walk, that I may never have the strength to be able to sit up on my own without help. And I was just basically given a very, very bleak outlook to life. But in Philippians 4, verse 4 to 7, it says, "Rejoice in the Lord always. I will say it again, rejoice. Let your gentleness be evident to all. The Lord is near. Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus." So when I was a baby, obviously I was given such a bleak outlook by the doctors, but the pastor of our church, I'm not exactly sure, it may well have been my first Sunday out of hospital, but it was certainly when I was very young. The pastor of our church, he prophesied to my parents, saying that little by little, that I'd be able to do more and more new things that will amaze people. And he prayed for two things specifically. And the first thing was that one day that I'd be physically able to walk down the aisle of the church, which is obviously very different from what the doctors were saying, because basically they said I would never walk and may never have the strength to sit up on my own without help. But I was actually able to sit up at quite a young age, and to get around I would just shuffle across the floor to wherever I wanted to go. But when I was 3 years old, I used to go to physiotherapy sessions very regularly at the Bristol Children's Hospital. And there was this one session in particular that I remember clearly to this day, because my physiotherapist propped me up against the wall. Just imagine I'm leaning against the wall now. And she let go of me and she said to me, "I want to see if you can start walking." And I tried and I tried and I tried. And I just remember feeling very frustrated because I couldn't move away from the wall. And I just couldn't really understand why. Because other children my age were up on their feet and running around. And I thought, well, why can't I do that? But then sometime after that, I was around 3.5 years old, and there was one night when Mum carried me up the stairs to go to bed. And again, this is something I remember very clearly, because as we were going up the stairs, I just had this thought that I might be able to start walking. And so I said to Mum, I think I might be able to start walking now. Can I try? And so in the same way as my physiotherapist propped me up against the wall, Mum propped me up against the wall, and she let go of me. And I was able to take 1, 2, 3 steps, and then I fell down. And we tried it again, and I took 1, 2, 3 steps, and then I fell down. Now, someone who is physically disabled like me is often referred to as having physical difficulties. And if you take the word difficult, are there any other words which have a similar meaning? And you may think of the word hard, or maybe the word challenging. Now, if you take these words, difficult, hard, and challenging, is there a word that sums up these words? And for me, that word is possible. Difficult means possible. Hard means possible. Challenging means possible. So for me, it was very significant that I was able to start by taking 3 steps. Because if you imagine that my first step, I was leaning against the wall, but then I was able to take 2 more steps, 1 on each foot, unaided before falling down, which meant that both legs were strong enough to take me, which meant for me that walking would be difficult. It would be hard. It was going to be a real challenge for me, but I still knew it was going to be possible. And so from then on, it was a matter, could I do a little bit more each day? And I remember the day after taking my first steps, I'd be downstairs at home, and my parents would prop me up against the wall, and I had to try and make it to the other side of the room. And I would make it part way across, and I fell over, and my parents picked me up, and I made it a bit further, and I fell over again, and my parents picked me up again, and eventually I was able to make it to the other side of the room. And then I was gradually able to do more each day until I was able to walk, obviously in my own way, which is very different from the way everyone else walks, but I was able to walk without thinking about what I was doing. And for me, it was great because it just meant I had that freedom. I had the independence. I didn't have to rely on anyone else to help me move around. And so I then went to school, and my parents decided it was best for me to try and go to a mainstream school rather than a school for disabled children, just so that I could try and lead as normal life as possible. They obviously realized that I would need help with certain tasks, but they thought that was the best thing for me, and I'm really glad I did. And at school break times, I would go out with my friends to the playground. And I didn't want to watch them play sports because I really wanted to try and join in everything that I could. I wasn't someone who wanted to watch from the side. So I was able to adapt and take part in various different sports, all at different levels of ability, ranging from things like running, football, table tennis. I had to go at rugby once. Couldn't really catch the ball. Couldn't get up off the floor. But apart from that, I think I was quite good. And swimming, just to mention a few sports. And I have taken part in other sports as well, but running, football, table tennis, and swimming would have been my favourite sports when I was growing up. And when I was 8 years old, I started having swimming lessons at school. And in my first swimming lesson, my swimming teacher put a life jacket on me, and he came in the shallow end of the pool with me. And he said to me, I want to see if you can start swimming. Now, my disability affects my whole body, so I've got very limited use of my arms and my legs. So just to demonstrate, I can't lift my arms independently any higher than that to actually keep them in the air. I can, if I put my hands together, I can lift them that high because they're basically supporting each other. But as soon as they come apart, I haven't got any strength in my arms. So very often I do tasks with 2 hands. But I can also swing my arms in the air. But as soon as they go up, they just drop straight back down because there isn't the strength in my arms to keep them in the air. But because I was able to move my arms like that, it meant I was able to swim slowly in the water. So at the end of that first swimming lesson, having seen me swim slowly, my swimming teacher said to me, I'm going to take your life jacket off now, go and swim down to the deep end of the pool. And with that being my first swimming lesson, I think I was probably a little bit scared about it, probably a little bit outside of my comfort zone. But it took me a couple of minutes, but I made it to the deep end. Then a few weeks after that, once I was more confident at swimming, he wanted to teach me to dive into the pool at the deep end. And most people obviously dive into the pool using their hands first. But obviously that doesn't work for me because my hands just don't stay in the air. And so he showed me a different way that he thought would work for me, where if you imagine I had to stand at the side of the pool like this, I had to fall forwards, head first into the water without lifting my arms. And when I was underwater, I'd have to turn and come out of the water on my back like that. And at the time, I remember feeling really quite scared because I thought, what if I can't turn when I'm underwater? What if I get stuck upside down? Because I wasn't sure if I was actually strong enough to turn. And I couldn't really see how it was going to work. And I'd be standing at the side of the pool for 15 or 20 minutes just because I was so scared about diving in. And I remember one time my teacher was so fed up with waiting for me to dive in, he just came along and pushed me in. But for me, I'm just really pleased that he made me do all this because it just really increased my confidence. So that I was able to progress with my swimming. And before I carry on with my story, none of this is to say, look what I can do, but it's to show you the miracle that I believe that God has performed in my life, bearing in mind what the doctors said, bearing in mind what the pastor prayed afterwards, because I believe that our pastor's prayer was answered and a lot more, because I was able to progress with my swimming so that when I was age around 14 or 15 years old, I got my 800-meter swimming badge. And then when I was in my... Thank you. When I was in my early 20s, I would swim a mile non-stop. And I do that each week just for fitness. And for me, I'm always someone who wants to take on challenges if I find a challenge that I can actually do. Really try and sort of, I suppose, push myself. And so back in 2014, I heard about the Sport Relief Swimathon, which is a charity swim. And they had 3 distances on offer. And I thought I'd really like to attempt the middle distance, which was a 2.5-kilometre swim. So equivalent to just over 1.5 miles, which is basically half a mile further than I'd ever swum in one go before. And I trained for it over a couple of months. And because I got quite good endurance, I was able to complete the distance fairly easily on the day. So in 2017, I thought, let's attempt the longest distance that they offer. And this was a 5-kilometre swim for Marie Curie. And 5 kilometres is equivalent to just over 3 miles. So if you take your average leisure centre swimming pool, which is 25 metres long, it was 200 lengths of the pool. Now, because this swim was such a long way for me, it was obviously going to be a real challenge for me, but just the very fact that I can move my arms like that, which means I can swim slowly in the water, I knew that if I really worked hard and put lots of training in, I knew it was going to be possible for me to complete the swim. And so I trained for over months and months, trying to gradually increase the distance. And on the day, I managed to complete the 5-kilometre swim in about 5.5 hours, which is obviously much slower than it would be for an able-bodied person swimming that distance, just simply because of the limited range of movement and the weak muscles that I have in my arms and my legs. Basically, every stroke I do, I don't go very far. So that's really why I'm slow, because I haven't got the strength in my arms. Now, having completed that 5-kilometre swim, someone contacted me because he knew I was into sports and into challenges. And he told me there's a triathlon taking place. And it's the first of its kind in the country, especially for disabled people like me to take part. And I thought I would absolutely love to give this a go. And for any of you who would have watched the London Olympics in 2012, God, that's quite a long time ago now, but it was held at Dorney Lake, which is the rowing venue for the London Olympics. And I've always enjoyed watching triathlons on television. And I thought, what a great opportunity this is for me to try it myself. Now, for any of you here who doesn't know what a triathlon is, it's a swim, a cycle, and a run. And so I entered the longest distance that they offered because I knew I wasn't very quick, but I knew I've got quite good endurance. So I thought, well, let's enter the longest distance, which is the equivalent of a sprint triathlon for an able-bodied person. So it's a 750-metre swim in a lake, which you'll see on video in just a couple of minutes. Then it was a 20-kilometer cycle. Now, you might look at me and think, how do I ride a bike? And I've got very limited bend in my legs. So, for example, hopefully a lot of you can see. I'll stand close to the edge. Take a look at my left knee if you can. I'm going to get my balance. And that is as far as my left knee will bend. So it's not enough to turn the pedals on a normal bike. So I would ride a hand cycle, which again you'll see on video in just a minute. And then after the 20-kilometer hand cycle, it was a 5-kilometer run. But I've had major ankle problems in the past. I had severe arthritis when I was 21 as part of my condition, which I needed treatment for. So as a result, I'm not supposed to run anymore because it could basically make my ankles very bad again. But I'm still allowed to walk as far as I like. So I thought if I can swim, if I can hand cycle, if I can walk, let's train for it. Let's see if I can complete the distance. And I was able to complete this triathlon in 2017, 2018, and 2019. And thank you. And each time it took me over 4 hours to complete it. Then it was cancelled in 2020 and 2021 because of the COVID situation. But in 2022, I found out that I was able to get a new 3-wheeler bike adapted with a much shorter pedal rotation, which means I've got just enough bend in my legs to turn the pedals. And so it's the first time I could ride a bike pedaling with my legs since I was 7 or 8 years old. And so obviously the shorter the rotation, the harder it is to turn the pedals. But I was still able to pedal. So obviously my cycling speed on the flat was about 7 or 8 miles an hour. So obviously much slower than it would be for an able-bodied person riding a bike. But at least I was still able to do it. So when I came to doing the triathlon in 2022, because my legs are quite a bit stronger than my arms, I was quite a bit faster on my new bike than my hand cycle. So I was able to set a new personal best for the triathlon by 22 minutes. I did the triathlon again in 2023, and I went another 9 minutes faster. I did it again in 2024, and that time I was quite a bit slower because it was 27 or 28 degrees and sunny. So it was pretty hot for doing a triathlon, so I couldn't push myself so hard because otherwise I'd just make myself very unwell. But so I've managed to complete this triathlon 6 times anyway, so far. Now, thank you. So I drive a car which has been specially adapted for me. So I've driven here this morning, just over 100 miles to come here. And most of you probably would have seen a car with a steering wheel in. I have got a steering wheel in my car, but it's either in the back of my car or in the boot at the moment. So basically, I steer my car with handlebars, just like riding a bike. So it's very different from a normal car and very, very sensitive steering, but it works really well for me. I can manage the pedals with my right foot because I've got enough use of my right side to operate the accelerator and brake. I haven't got enough use of my left side, so it's an automatic car, so I don't need to use the clutch. And then for all the secondary controls, so things like the horn, the windscreen wipers, the lights, and the indicators, it's very different in my car because I've basically got a head control. It's a button on my headrest. So, for example, if I want to indicate to turn left, I hold the button down for 2 bleeps like this, bleep, bleep, and off. Or if I want to indicate to turn right, I hold it down for 3 bleeps, bleep, 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 and off. And by having this car adapted for me, it gives me such a lot of independence because I regularly speak all over the country, and it just means I can drive myself to wherever I need to go, and I don't need anyone else to take me. So, for example, a few weeks ago, I had bookings all the way up to Aberdeen, and I drove my car up there. I live just north of Bristol. And last summer, I drove down to central France to see my cousin. And so by having this car adapted for me, it just gives me all the independence that I need. And I'm basically very grateful that although I need help with certain tasks, that I can still lead a sort of relatively normal life, even though I need help with certain things. So at this point, I'm now going to show a short video. And this video just demonstrates how I've adapted to take part in some of these sports and activities. Thank you.
Through you, I can do anything. I can do all things. 'Cause it's you who gives me strength. Nothing is impossible. Through you.
Thank you very much, everyone. So if any of you would like to see that video again later, you can find it on YouTube just by typing my name, Bart, and my surname is Gee, which is spelled G-E-E. If you type that into the YouTube search, you'll find that video and many other videos on my channel. Now, I've had the question asked in the past, if God is real, if God is a loving God, why hasn't he healed me? Why am I disabled? And of course, God can heal people, but I also believe that God can use people through the difficulty of their situation so that his works can be displayed and for his glory to shine through that person. And in 2 Corinthians 12, verse 8 to 10, it says, 3 times I pleaded with the Lord to take it away from me. But he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, I will boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses, so that Christ's power may rest on me. That is why, for Christ's sake, I delight in weaknesses and insults, in hardships and persecutions, in difficulties. For when I am weak, then I am strong. Now, I've had many times in my life when I've noticed God's plans being perfect. You know, God's timing is perfect. Everything falls into place at just the right time. And in late 2018, I had quite a surprising invite, which was to go and share my story out in India. And it was to go in August 2019, but the invite came at the end of 2018. So I had quite a lot of time to prepare for it. And I thought I would absolutely love to go, but how is it going to work? Because you'll probably realize looking at me that I need help with certain things. And one of the main things I need help with is care. I need help with getting ready in the mornings and so on. Will I be able to organize this out in India before I go? But the Sunday after I was invited, I told some friends from my church that I'd been invited to India. And one of my friends is called Isaac. And he's originally from India. And I told him the name of the town that I'd be flying into. It was a town I'd never heard of before called Vijayawada. And he told me he's got relatives who live not far from there. And he knows the area. And without me even asking him, he offered to come with me to give me all the help that I needed. And he's a doctor. You know, so it just absolutely fell into place. You know, everything just fell into place. You know, it's just amazing. And I'm going to be talking about India in just a couple of minutes. But back in 2014, I had quite a surprising invite, which was just to go and share my story at Bristol Brunel Academy, which is a secondary school in Bristol. And at that time, I really wasn't used to talking in front of people at all. I didn't even feel like I had, I suppose, even the confidence to do it. But I agreed to go, just to go and talk about my disability and to play the piano, because I play the piano. And basically, the teacher invited me in because I know her slightly through one of my friends. And I was expecting to turn up and just go into a classroom to speak to a class. But when I arrived, I found out that I was going to be taking assemblies to year 9, and then year 8, and then year 7. 3 assemblies, half an hour each. And I thought, oh no, because I was that nervous about getting up in front of people. But that day for me, I think, was quite significant because I had children queuing up to ask me questions at the end of each assembly and wanting to see me play the piano close up. Because although I played the piano in the assembly, they couldn't really work out how I was doing it with my hands and my fingers the way they are. But there were 2 things that really stood out to me that day. There was a boy in year 8, and he came up to me, and all he said quietly was, "Sir, I think you're amazing." And I thought that was really nice, but I didn't think too much of it until later that evening. The teacher who invited me in messaged me to thank me for coming in. And in her message, she said that she overheard the boy say that to me and couldn't believe it because he was the worst behaved in the year and was on report. So she said it had a real impact on him. And then the other thing that day was there was a girl in year 7, and she came up to me. And she said that when I played the piano at the end, she started to cry. And it was because her mum had a disability. I'm not sure what the disability was now, but she'd basically given up trying to cope with her disability. And so she said she was going to go home and tell her mum all about me and really try and motivate her. And it occurred to me that day, what if God could use me through my disability? And I didn't really do anything for quite a long time afterwards. But about 18 months later, I was invited to speak at the Elim Church in Oldbury near Birmingham, where I knew the pastor. So I agreed to go there. And then having seen on Facebook that I was going there, an old school friend said, could I go to her school in London? So I went there. And then I thought, this is it. This is what I really feel I should be doing. And so I set up my website, breakinglimits.co.uk, at the start of 2016. And I basically prayed to God that if this is the right thing for me to do, that opportunities would open up. And, it was slow to start with, but because obviously people hadn't heard of me, but it gradually accelerated and accelerated. So I actually counted in 2019, I had 148 bookings through the year in churches, schools, and prisons, of which 13 of them were out in India. Which for me was amazing. And you probably will have seen in the middle of the video that I showed just now, the clip where I was playing the drums. That was one of the school assemblies in India that I took. Now, that was a Christian school. I had to do 2 assemblies back to back. The first assembly had 1,500 children in. That assembly there was for the older children. There were about 1,200 children in that assembly. And although it was a Christian school, they had children there from non-Christian backgrounds as well. And so basically I was asked at the end if I could open it up just to see if anyone wanted to invite Jesus into their hearts. And I was amazed at the response because I could only clearly see the front sort of 300 children because of the sunlight at the back. But out of those 300 children, 20 responded, which was just amazing. So I actually really believe now that God is able to use me through my disability, and I see it as an opportunity to get into schools, to get into prisons, because otherwise, why would they invite me if I wasn't disabled, for example? And so I get to share my Christian faith with others, whereas if I didn't have my disability, I wouldn't actually get these opportunities to go in and share my Christian faith with others. So I actually think to myself now, would I actually be any happier if I was able-bodied? And although there are some difficulties that I face, I don't think I would be, because I really feel that God is actually using me through my disability, and I feel like I've got a real sort of purpose in life. I feel that He's given me this purpose to do this, and for me, it's still difficult actually getting up and speaking in front of people, but I believe that God has enabled me to do this. So, going back to the second thing that the pastor prayed, and as I go through this, I wonder if the worship team could come and join me on stage, please. That'd be brilliant at the same time. The second thing that the pastor of our church prayed was that when I was a baby, was that one day I'd be able to play the organ like my dad. And Dad would play the organ at church every week, and being able-bodied, he'd play using both hands and all of his fingers. But also when I was a baby, when the doctors gave the bleak outlook to my parents, Mum asked the doctor with just that little bit of hope, because Dad plays the piano and the organ, and obviously the piano is very similar to the organ to play with your hands. Mum asked if there's ever any chance of me being able to play. And the doctor said, look at my hands as they were as a baby. There's just absolutely no chance whatsoever. There was even doubt that I'd have the strength to press down a key. But when I was 5 years old, we had a piano at home which Dad would play regularly in the evenings. And I used to just sit there and watch him play. And because he was a very good musician, it just really inspired me. And I thought I would absolutely love to be able to play like him. And so I asked my parents if I could start having piano lessons. And although they were told that there would be absolutely no chance of me being able to play, they could see that I really wanted to try. And so they thought, well, why not? Let's set up a piano lesson to see how I get on. It might be a challenge that I could set myself. And so in my first piano lesson, it was a matter of did I have the strength to press down a key? I did with my right hand, and I did with my left hand. So again, just the very fact that I had the strength in both hands to press down a key meant that playing the piano for me, it was definitely going to be a real challenge, but it was still going to be possible. And I had to really work out with my piano teacher how I was going to be able to progress. Because I can't use all my fingers now. That's basically as much movement as I've got in my fingers. But I remember as soon as I was able to start playing, I really wanted to try and get to a standard where I could play in church without my playing being a distraction to people worshipping. And what I mean by that is because of my very poor fingering, I'd have a tendency to hit down lots of wrong notes as well as the notes I intended to play as well. But when I was 8 years old, I remember I asked Dad, because Dad was very much involved in the worship team at church, I asked Dad if I could join just on a keyboard. I had a small keyboard that children would play, like a 5-octave keyboard with lightweight keys, and I asked if I could join in, and I'd just come as just an extra musician, probably playing not much more than one note at a time, and we play some old songs, and maybe some of you will know this, and I like doing my own arrangements these days. Do join me if you like. Do you recognize it? Come and join, please.
Exalted far above all.
I exalt thee.
I exalt thee. I exalt thee. I exalt thee. Oh Lord, I exalt thee. I exalt thee. I exalt thee. Oh
For thou.
Exalted far above all gods. For thou, O Lord, art high above all the earth. Thou art exalted far above all gods. I exalt thee. I exalt thee. I exalt thee.
Thank you. So we're gonna do another song. Hopefully you'll know it at the church. Trust in God, and I'm gonna be playing with the worship team for this one. Thank you.